Hello, hello, and welcome to Effin' Fridays with Francine. I am excited to be here today. So, welcome to season two. This is the first episode of season two. Season one ended in December, and thank you for those of you that have listened, subscribed, shared it, all the things. I'm really excited for this next season of the podcast and of my life. And that's what I want to chat about today. But the podcast itself, everyone that I'm going to be talking to this season, as of right now, are people that I have never met. So last season were a lot of people that I knew and I knew their story. And, they might be in my inner circle or maybe my outer circle or my outer circle, but I had some connection to them. The people in this season, I really don't. And it's been really cool so far. I've done a few of the interviews that'll start dropping next week. But it's really fun to meet new people and hear different perspectives. So I'm excited to share that with you this season. And for my own personal next season, this weekend, I am celebrating my 60th birthday. And let me tell you, just saying that out loud makes me go, what the fuck? I don't even know how that's possible. It's a milestone. And I don't know why it feels like it's a milestone, but it does. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's a lie. I'm actually lying to you. I know why it feels like a milestone. But I don't know why I'm making it a milestone. It doesn't have to be, right? I have always really felt age is just a number. But for some reason, there have been a few ages in my life that felt bigger. The first one was 48. My mom died at 48 back in 1991, right? It was literally the month before, 1 month to the day before I turned 26. And for a long time, my story was I'm going to be dead at 48. Here I am 12 years later, still kicking and very, very much alive with lots more to go. And when I was 48, I was actually in coaching school. So I felt pretty sure that as I was entering that next chapter, I was going to be around for a little while. And 60 feels a little different. You hear, and I hear a lot of the people in my circle around me that are also turning 60 or in their 60s are starting to slow down, talking about retirement. I took my Big-Ass Uplevel less than 5 years ago. I'm kind of like full steam ahead. So I feel like I'm in a different place. Mentally, I don't feel like I'm 60. Physically, for those of you who have been listening for a little while, I've had a hip and a knee replacement in the last year and a half. So physically, maybe a little bit, but I will say, I've been treating my body really good and feeding it good, nourishing foods, since the beginning of the year, and my body is feeling much better and very grateful. And I think there's something, not I think, I know that there's something about my mom dying at 48 that feels big, right? And here I am turning 60, and she never got that chance. A lot has come up for me over the last year in relation to that, even in relation to women in my family dying young. I feel like the one of the oldest was my grandmother, and she was in her, I don't even know if she was 65. So there's something that feels big about this milestone. And then, I've been spending some time reflecting on my life, my journey to this point. And I want to just share with you some lessons that I've learned from the last, maybe not 60 years, but I'll at least go back to the last 40 since I was in my 20s when my mom died. So she um, in July of 1990. So I was 25. Um, she was diagnosed with lung cancer and she was gone in January. So it was quick. And my sisters and I'm the oldest of three. My sisters and I stayed in our family home for 10 years. My parents got divorced when I was 15. So, but they had a really nice, they had a good divorce. I would say when doing some inner child work, my little inner child 15-year-old will disagree with that. But as an adult, I would say my parents had a really great divorce. But I kind of became mom, right? For those of you who have been around a while and know me, I weighed 300 pounds back then. Up until I was always a heavy kid. I had lost some weight before my mom got sick, but then when she was sick, um, and probably after, I don't remember the timeline, but I gained it all and then some. So I assume in my 30s, right around the time I was 30, I weighed around 300 pounds. But in my 20s, it was really about friends and finding myself. I didn't go to college. So when mom died, we kind of had it was almost like a sorority fraternity house at our house. Our friends were hanging out. We had a pool, right? We were adults that had a home, kids in our 20s. We were in our 20s and we owned this really big home and we had friends that lived with us and roommates. And it was actually a lot of fun, quite honestly. It was a lot of fun. And I remember turning 30 and feeling like a shift, like something shifted and I felt different. And right after my 30th birthday, I do think I had like a little breakdown right around the time I turned 30. That's a whole other. And I'm not that I had a mental health crisis, but it was a lot. I was in charge of our finances with me and my sisters, and we weren't we was I think I was out of work at the time. So there was a lot that I was dealing with. And I turned 30 in February, and later that month, my sister was also, her birthday's later in the month in February, and right around her birthday, I had a cold, and I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. So picture this, I'm 300 pounds smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Uh, Not the healthiest lifestyle back then. And I was so sick, I physically couldn't smoke anymore. So I actually quit smoking, mostly by force, somewhat by choice. I stayed by choice. And then as the year progressed in my 30s, I realized I've always worked multiple jobs. I had a full-time job, I was a hairdresser. I think I had another part-time job. I think at the time I might have been working 3 jobs. And I was eating 3 meals a day out of my house and couldn't afford it anymore. Literally couldn't afford it anymore. So I started bringing my lunch. And, there's a little bit of a caloric difference between a steak and cheese and some French fries and a turkey on Syrian with some baked lays. So I started losing weight and I started to put more effort into it. And I assume I've probably lost, depending upon the day, about 130, 140 pounds. And I think that was over the course of maybe 2 years. So maybe by the time I was 32, 33, I had lost the weight and then started working out more, etc. And then when I was 34, I met my husband on a blind date. And we met in April. We were engaged in February and married the following February. And then the following year, I had a hysterectomy. So I got out of the hospital on my 1 year wedding anniversary. So from like 34 to 36, I think, there was a lot that happened. And the hysterectomy, I was never someone who died to have children. Like it wasn't in my DNA that, oh my God, I have to get married and have babies. That was never my lifelong goal for myself. But after having the hysterectomy, that it became real that it wasn't an option anymore. And I had to mourn that and grieve that. And then my sister got pregnant, my middle sister, and it was such a joyous time. This was going to be the first grandchild, and she had a mom and two aunts that were going to spoil her rotten. And then on February 26th, 2004, right after I turned 39, she was stillborn. We're actually getting ready. This year would have been her 21st birthday. And that shook us. It still does sometimes, 21 years later. But I think that was the start of my spiritual journey. I had been probably dabbling in my 20s, but I didn't have community. I remember going to Salem, Mass, and holding a crystal in my hand and having some sort of religious experience, but not knowing what the hell was going on because I didn't have community to talk about it. So I bought books and, trying to see if I could do this on my own. But after Dakota died, I really had questions. I needed answers. I needed to understand what this bigger picture was, right? We all say, oh, it all happens for a reason. Well, that's bullshit after you've held a dead baby in your arms. Sorry for being blunt, but the oh, it only happens for a reason is bullshit in those moments. And I've since learned there was a bigger picture. It was a much bigger picture, and her soul was just too big for this lifetime right now. So my 40s were really this time of discovery. I remember being in my mid 40s and wondering, like, where the hell did all my girlfriends go? Like, everyone's getting married and having babies, and I didn't have children, so I didn't have that connection with them. I mean, we would see each other, but obviously their children were their top priorities. And I was still like, hey, let's go grab a drink. Let's go have dinner. Let's go do something fun. And they couldn't always do that. So I was searching online and I came across this um, women's group called Magic Parties. They met once a month and had these amazing conversations. And the group was run by a couple of coaches. And at the time, so this is probably 15 years ago, coaching was not the buzzword that it is today. Nobody knew what coaching was. And I thought to myself, this is for me. I need to do this. The problem was it wasn't cheap to go to coaching school and it just wasn't in my budget. So I let it go. And I just kept wishing and wanting for it to happen. In the meantime, I got my Reiki certification because I was starting to explore energy healing. And then a friend dropped dead of a heart attack at the age of 50. And I was about 47 at the time. And I thought, okay, how much longer are you putting off this dream to go to coaching school? Because this could be you, this could be any of us. So I think the week after the funeral, I called the school and said, when does your next program start? And how much is this, like, how much is a student loan? I think I paid $120 a month for 10 years or something like that. I paid it off a couple of years ago. So I went to coaching school, but still had a story that I couldn't quit my day job. I couldn't, make the money that I needed to make. I couldn't do this. I couldn't, right? I still was in my head telling me all the stories. I went to a, when I turned in my early 50s, I went to the Reese Thomas Institute, which is a life mastery training, energy healing program. And that shifted. I went to the school for 4 years and then taught at the school for 4 years. I just stopped teaching a couple of years ago. And that was a game changer. That was really owning my own shit, right? Really looking at Francine and what did I want? So when in 2019, in December of 2019, I was with a startup that didn't quite start up. And the week before Christmas, I get pulled into my boss's office. The HR guy walks in, never a good sign, and they were closing the company down. Great. I'll just look for another job. Well, this little thing called COVID happened and kind of shifted the job front. And in April of 2020, somebody reached out and was like, hey, you coaching? And I was like, sure, because what the hell else am I doing besides painting my entire house, right? Like every one of us, right? So I started taking on some clients. but I was still looking for a job because that's what you need to do. That's what I needed to do, right? You need to get a job. You need to make the money. But what I realized was every time I had I always, I'm somebody has spent almost 60 years, close to 60 years, probably at least 50, living from their head. And the last 10 has really been about learning to listen to my body, listen to what messages my body is telling me. Every single time I had a job interview, was feeling anxious. And I'm not typically an anxious person, but like I could feel the flutters in my chest. I could feel the level of anxiety. And that was my soul going, we don't want to go back to corporate. We want to do this healing thing. We want to do this coaching thing. Please let us do that. So at some point I had to just make the decision and make my big ass up level. Somebody recently asked me, what does a big ass up level mean? And I said, it can mean different things for different people, but I think the fundamental piece of a big ass up level is it's got to scare you a little bit. It's got to push you to your edge. And that's what it did for me, right? I've been working since I was 14 years old. So for close to 45, 50, I don't know, do the math, right? Um, I have been working for someone. I get a paycheck every Friday. I have a 401k. I have taxes taken out. Right? All of that. So shifting that was a big ass up level and then trusting that it was all going to be okay. The other thing I did in my 50s was a lot of physical healing, right? Paying attention to my body and taking care of it and actually taking the time that is necessary for it to heal. I'm not going to lie, there are days I am friggin' impatient. I am ready for this healing part to be over with my knee. I'm almost 4 months post-op, and it can take 6 to 12. So I got to just chill the fuck out. And I'm doing that. I'm learning to do that more and more. So as I'm just days away from the next decade, I envision this decade to be more of embracing ease and flow and going deeper into myself, deeper into my own spiritual journey, my own spiritual alignment, because that's all that really matters is my relationship with me. And that's when I say going into myself, that's really what it is. My own spiritual journey is going deeper into myself, connecting to me. You know, some of the thing when I was reflecting on what I wanted to share in this episode, one of the things was, what I wish I had known earlier in life is that I hold the key to everything that happens in my life. I am responsible for it all. That doesn't mean that if something bad happens, then I did something bad. That just means I'm responsible for all my responses to everything that happens as well. And I think that as I step into 60, it's going even deeper into that, right? I have a lot of stuff that's been coming up lately, and it's all stuff that's been there, but it's coming to a head to be healed. And I can feel it. And sometimes that is allowing myself to sit with it. And it's uncomfortable. And if any of you have ever worked with me or know me, I'm all about sitting in the uncomfortable. And sometimes, not a fan, not gonna lie. I want to run from it. And sometimes I do. But the more you run, the more it chases you. And at some point, it catches up with you. So I am doing my best to just sit with it right now. And I would say some of the things that I have had to work through on this emotional and spiritual journey over the last 60 years is there's been a lot of grief, from my mom dying at 48 to my niece dying and healing around that. And my mother and I didn't have a bad relationship, but I would say when she got sick, I felt closer to her. I was becoming an adult. So I do think our relationship would have been different, but I still was young. I was 25, 26 years old. I was still a kid, real when you think about it, even though I was an adult with responsibilities, I still, and I've had to learn how to release expectations and embrace what is, right? Like, yes, every day I'd rather have a different relationship with my mother and having her here so we could have built on that. And that didn't happen. So allowing myself to just trust that the relationship I had is exactly the one that we were meant to have. And that chapter got closed earlier than we would have liked. There's something about aging that gives you, my mother had this book and she was only, like I said, only 48, but I think it's called the Red Hat Society. When I'm old, I'm going to wear a big red hat and people are going to have to allow me to do it because of this, because I'm, of this age. And I really want to let go of societal narratives around aging. I'm not fishing for compliments. That's not what this is. But most people will say to me, "Oh my God, I would not have known you were 60. I would have thought you were in your 40s, your 50, whatever that is." And like, why does it matter what the number is? Like, who cares? And somehow we place so much emphasis on it. When I was a matchmaker, I was shocked at how much age played into people wanting to date. I won't date someone over this age. I won't date someone who's this old. And it was really because of the stories they were telling themselves. Oh, people over 67 are sickly. I mean, I used to have people all the time say, I don't want to be someone's caretaker. Well, you can be a caretaker of somebody who's in their 30s if they get sick, right? But we assume you're over a certain age, you're sick, you're frail, you're feeble, you're fill in the blank. And I'm just going to call bullshit on all that. Yeah, our body changes. Absolutely. Our brain even changes a little bit. And we get to decide how we want to feel about it. So for this next chapter, I'm calling bullshit on the social narratives. But I am going to also call in more ease, right? Less doing, more being, which is something that I talk about and still struggle with at times. The difference now is when I'm over busy, where 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would have pushed through. I can't anymore. It actually makes me feel uncomfortable. So I struggle with it. I think the biggest mindset shift that I have had over the years is to look within for the answers. Stop pointing the fingers at this one did that, he should have, she should have, all of that. It still shows up, not gonna lie, I'm human, but I really look internally as opposed to externally for the answers. Okay, what's going on in me when that person does this? And I would invite you, if that's something that you notice that you do a lot of, pointing figures, look internally. Because the answers are never outside of you. The answers are always 100% inside of you. So what am I doing for my birthday? I'm throwing myself a fucking party. An effing party. That's what I'm doing. I'm throwing myself an effing party. My top values are connections and fun. And I want to be around people that have been part of my journey. And I am getting together with friends and celebrating where I've been and where I'm going. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm excited to be able to do this. So as I wrap up, I'm going to invite you Took a nice big sigh there. Did you feel that? Oh, yeah. Let's take a nice deep breath. Yeah, that feels good. So, I've been doing some journaling on myself and reflecting on this place where I'm at. And I would invite you to spend some time thinking about what you might say to your younger self if you could send a message. What would you want to tell them? Or if your future self could send you a message, what would you want them to say? And I think for me, for my younger self, I think it's two things. One, you do hold the key for everything in your life. You get to decide how your life turns out, and you're going to be okay no matter what happens. I think that's important. I had a coach say that to me a couple of years ago, and it took someone else saying that to me for me to go, wow, she's right. I have always landed on my feet. And I remember that now when things feel a little icky. And if my future self could send me a message, I think she might just say, you go, girl. You're kicking ass. And you're going to be okay. Because I think sometimes, even myself, I need that reminder. I need that concrete knowing. So as I wrap up this first episode of season 2 of Effin' Fridays with Francine, I want to thank you for being part of this journey and my journey, my personal and my professional journey. And just remember to embrace every season of your life fully with joy, by trusting, by surrendering. And it's never too late to go after your own big ass up level. And if that's something that you're antsy about, let's have a conversation. Reach out to me. My contact information will be in the show notes. You can go to my website, foreverchangedcoaching.com, and schedule a call with me. No obligation. If you just need some support about figuring out what's next, let's jump on a call and see if I can help you. As always, I pulled some cards and I pulled from my favorite deck. My favorite deck is called the Sacred Traveler, and I thought this place where I'm at is sacred and I am on a journey. So that is the deck that I chose to pick from. So I have 3 cards. I have one on the left, one on the center, and one on the right. And I'm going to invite you to take a nice deep breath and just ask the universe what message you need to hear right now. I'm going to choose center for myself. Hmm. Travel lightly, simplify your life. Yeah, I think I've definitely been doing that over the years. Still a little high maintenance, always going to be, but I definitely think I like things a little simpler. If you chose right, great adventure. Take a risk and venture forward. So if when I was just talking about a big ass up level and you were like, oh, maybe that's me, I don't know. Reach out and let's have a conversation. It was you. And that was the left. I'm sorry. Did I say right? That was the left. And right. Oh, here's another one. And on the right, and I don't look at these before the call, so I'm always seeing them for the first time. On the right, it's begin now. Take your first step. So if you chose right as well, and you weren't sure about whether or not you need a big ass up level, let's talk. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I'm excited for season 2. I hope that today's episode has inspired you a little bit to maybe check in with yourself and see where you're at in your journey. Remember that transformation begins from within. Take a moment every day to connect with your higher self and trust that the universe is guiding you toward your highest good. If you found today's episode of value, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with those that might benefit from the message. Your support really helps me reach more souls on their spiritual journey. Stay connected with our community on social. All my links will be in the show notes. You can visit my website, like I said, foreverchangecoaching.com. And until next time, continue to shine your light and walk in peace and love. This is Francine Tirrell, and this has been Effin' Fridays with Francine. Thank you for being here.